Hey everyone, I'm Kestrel. Have you ever thought you escaped a snake pit, only to realize the snakes are still hot on your heels, ready to strike again? Well, that's where my story starts. Stick around till the end, and trust me, you're going to want to hear how this soap opera ends. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're curious about how my ex-mother-in-law almost stole my life. Picture this, you finally got it together after a messy divorce. You're standing on solid ground, thinking, yes, I made it. Then bam, karma winks and says, not so fast. That's where I found myself just last month. I'm 32, a real estate agent, and most importantly, a mom to my incredible 7-year-old daughter, Emma. Life was finally going smoothly until Martha, my ex-mother-in-law, decided to play matchmaker, and she chose my kid's birthday party of all places. Emma's so excited about her party next weekend. I told my colleague Sophia over coffee, I just hope Martha doesn't turn it into another family reunion. Sophia gave me a knowing look. Girl, why do you even let your ex's family stay involved? That's just inviting trouble. I know, but Emma loves her grandparents, and I don't want to be that bitter ex who cuts them out, I sighed. That afternoon, I was showing a beachfront property when my phone buzzed for the 10th time that day. Martha again. Kestrel dear, did you order the cake yet? I went ahead and ordered one myself, just in case. And oh, I invited a few more people. You remember my nephew James, don't you? Martha, we agreed on a small party. Emma gets overwhelmed with too many people. Nonsense. Family is everything. Besides, James has been asking about you. I hung up, my stomach twisting. Ever since my divorce from Michael 2 years ago, after I caught him with his work colleague in our own bed, Martha had been relentless about pushing eligible bachelors my way. Lately, her focus had zeroed in on James, who mysteriously seemed to appear at every family event. That evening, as I was helping Emma with her homework, my ex-sister-in-law, Rachel, called. Hey, just a heads up, Mom's planning something for Emma's party. I overheard her and James talking about some big announcement. What kind of announcement? I asked, feeling a chill. Not sure, but knowing Mom. Be careful, Kestrel. James isn't exactly the nice guy she makes him out to be. I looked at Emma, who was happily coloring her princess invitations, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. After Michael's lies, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation, I'd vowed to keep toxic people out of our lives. But Martha was like a spider, weaving her web so subtly you didn't realize you were trapped until it was too late. Mommy, can I wear my tiara to my party? Of course, baby. It's your special day, and nothing's going to ruin it. If only I had known how wrong I was. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones with a knife hidden behind their back. I closed my laptop, done with work for the day, watching Emma twirl in her princess dress. We'd survived Michael's betrayal, rebuilt our lives, and found our rhythm. But Martha's constant meddling was escalating, and something about this party felt like the calm before a storm. The morning of Emma's birthday began like a fairy tale, streamers, balloons, and my little girl bouncing with excitement. But by the afternoon, it was starting to feel like a nightmare. Mommy, Ashley and Katie are here. Emma squealed, running to greet her friends in her sparkly purple dress as I hung the last of the decorations. When Martha burst through the door, she brought what looked like half the family tree in tow. Where should we put all these extra chairs? She trilled. James, be a dear and help set them up. My heart stopped. James. Of course he was here, flashing that fake smile that never quite reached his eyes. Before I could protest, Martha had taken over my kitchen, moving everything I carefully arranged. These store-bought cupcakes won't do, she declared, shuffling my carefully prepared food aside. Good thing I brought my homemade ones. Martha, Emma specifically asked for chocolate cupcakes, which is why I... Nonsense. Trust me, I know what's best. Oh, James, doesn't Kestrel look lovely today? Across the room, Rachel caught my eye, her worried expression mirroring my own. The party was growing stifling with all these uninvited family members, most of whom I'd never even met. Emma's friends huddled together in a corner, looking overwhelmed. Then it was time for cake. My stomach churned as Martha insisted on gathering everyone around. Emma stood there, her tiara askew, 7 tiny candles flickering in front of her. She looked so small amidst the crowd of strangers. Before we sing, I have a wonderful announcement. Martha's voice rang out, sharp as a bell. Martha, don't. Rachel tried to interrupt, But it was too late. Our dear Kestrel and my nephew James are getting married. Isn't it wonderful? Emma's finally getting a new daddy. The room fell silent. Emma's face crumpled, her eyes filling with tears. But I don't want a new daddy, she whimpered. James stepped forward, attempting to put his arm around me. Surprise, honey. I shoved his arm away, my voice shaking with rage. What the hell is wrong with you people? You are lying. Emma burst into tears and ran upstairs. Her friends' parents looked horrified, murmuring excuses as they gathered their things to leave. How dare you, Martha? I spat, feeling my blood boil. There is no engagement. There never was. Don't be silly, dear, Martha said, her tone icy. James and I have been planning this for weeks. It's perfect timing. And that's when I saw it. The smug look James and Martha exchanged. This wasn't a misguided attempt at matchmaking. This was calculated. Everyone out? Now, my voice was ice cold. The party's over. But the presents, Martha started, eyes wide with feigned innocence. Get out. As the crowd filed out, I caught James whispering something to Martha. She nodded, that smug smile plastered on her face. Only Rachel stayed behind, helping me clean up the wreckage. Kez, there's something you need to know about James, she said quietly. He's done this before. Upstairs, I could hear Emma's muffled sobs. My little girl's special day had been ruined, and beneath my fury, something stronger was brewing. Determination. They thought they could manipulate me, push their way into our lives. But I'd had enough. This wasn't just about a birthday party anymore. This was war. 2 days after the party fiasco, I sat with Sophia at work, still trembling with anger as I showed her Emma's new therapy schedule. She hadn't slept through a single night since that day. Her teacher had called to let me know Emma had a panic attack when someone mentioned birthdays in class. Sophia's fingers flew over her keyboard. Your mother-in-law picked the wrong real estate agent to mess with. I've got contacts all over. Let's see what Prince Charming James has been up to. My phone buzzed. A passive-aggressive text from Martha. Emma needs a father figure. You're being selfish. Sophia spun her monitor around. James Henderson, formerly James Mitchell. He's changed his name twice in 5 years. Look familiar. The screen showed a list of lawsuit filings. Multiple women, single mothers, accusing him of love bombing, staging fake engagements, then helping his family file for custody rights. There was more. Rachel had joined us, holding a worn notebook. I found Mom's notebook. She's been documenting everything. Every time Emma was late to school, every scraped knee, every day you worked late. She's building a case. My blood ran cold. A case for what? Grandparents' rights, Rachel said, her face pale. With James claiming to be Emma's future stepfather, they think they have grounds to petition for partial custody. Nausea twisted my stomach as I opened Martha's Facebook page. Hidden within her posts were countless subtle jabs. Praying for my granddaughter Emma. Single mothers have it so hard. Worried about Emma's emotional well-being. Children need stable father figures. She'd been planning this for months. Rachel's face softened. She did the same thing to Michael's first wife, Made her look unstable until she finally gave up trying to see her son. The pieces fell into place. My marriage to Michael, the constant interference, the surprise visits, it wasn't just manipulation. It was a scheme. Martha had chosen me because I was young, successful, someone who'd look good to the courts. I wasn't just fighting for birthday memories anymore. I was fighting for our future. They're coming for Emma, I whispered, voice cracking. Not if we stop them first, Sophia said firmly, grabbing a fresh notepad. Those women James conned. They're willing to talk. And I found out he's still legally married to wife number 2. I thought of Emma, of the way Martha had been chipping away at my authority, of James thinking he could waltz into our lives and turn my daughter into a pawn. I need every scrap of evidence, I told them. Every text, every email, every social media post. If Martha wants to document my parenting, then let's show her how it's really done. Rachel squeezed my hand. Mom's hosting her annual charity brunch next weekend. Everyone who's anyone in the family will be there. A plan began forming in my mind. If Martha liked putting on shows, fine. I'd give her a performance to remember. The charity brunch was in full swing when Rachel and I entered. The country club's dining room buzzed with the chatter of family members and society elites. It was the perfect audience. Kestrel, I'm so glad you came to your senses about the engagement. Martha rushed over, pulling James along. Everyone's been asking about the wedding plans. Oh, I have an announcement about that, I replied, glancing at Rachel. She nodded, dimming her lights as a projector screen descended from the ceiling. What's this? Martha's smile faltered. A very special presentation. I clicked the remote. Suddenly, James's mugshot filled the screen. Everyone meet James Mitchell, or is it Henderson now? Hard to keep track with all the name changes. 3 fraud convictions, 2 ongoing lawsuits, and my personal favorite, a current marriage license. His? What? Martha's face went white. That would be to me. A woman strode into the room, a designer handbag swinging at her side. Hi, honey, miss me. James stumbled backward. Sarah. Thanks for the tip about my husband's whereabouts, she nodded at me. The divorce lawyer says the fraud charges are a slam dunk. Martha tried to regain control. There must be some mistake. Like the mistakes you made with Michael's first wife? I clicked to the next slide. Or the custody battle you orchestrated. Or these posts defaming my parenting. I was protecting Emma. By traumatizing her. I asked. By making her afraid of her own birthday. An older woman stood up, Martha's sister. Is this true? Like what you did to my daughter-in-law? The room erupted. Years of Martha's lies and manipulation unraveled as more family members connected the dots. You told me Janet abandoned her son, a cousin said. So that's why Claire left town. As James tried to slink toward the exit, 2 uniformed officers blocked his path. Sir, we have some questions about those fraud charges. 6 months later, Emma and I stood in our backyard, hanging decorations for her half-birthday party. Her therapist had suggested reclaiming birthdays with happy memories, just us and real friends this time. Rachel and Sophia were helping too. Since that fateful brunch, Martha's social circle had crumbled. James was facing jail time for fraud, and Sarah won everything in the divorce. And Martha? The family court judge took one look at the evidence and terminated all her rights to see Emma. I watched my daughter, healthy and happy again. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about breaking free and building something better from the ashes. Emma and I, we were just getting started. What would you have done if your mother-in-law announced a fake engagement at your child's birthday? Would you expose her immediately or plan a calculated revenge like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
When my husband's mom, Catherine, found out my husband had to move abroad for work, she decided we had to leave the house. We had nowhere to go, so I took my 2-year-old daughter to the park, feeling lost and unsure of what to do. Suddenly, police officers surrounded me, asking me to go to the station. It was raining hard, and I was shivering from the cold as I followed them. At the station, I was surprised to see someone unexpected waiting for me. Her name was Emma, and she told me she's turning 35 this year. Emma shared her story, how she met her husband, Bob, at work, and they got married after dating for a year. They had a daughter named Lily, and they lived with Bob's mom, Catherine. Emma explained that they used to rent a place, but after Catherine's husband died and she started having knee problems, they decided to buy a new apartment and live together. They thought it was better because the apartment had an elevator, which made life easier for Catherine. Buying an apartment was cheaper than a house, and since Bob's job often required travel, they chose somewhere with good transportation access. But even though we bought the house, my husband's transfer was put on hold for a while. However, he still travels a lot for work, even more than other employees. He goes on business trips about once a week to different states. With a 2-year-old daughter, it's really stressful for me when he's away. At first, my mother-in-law, Catherine, was helpful, but now she doesn't help with taking care of our daughter at all. In fact, she makes more work for me. She leaves her dishes dirty and cooking utensils unwashed, which adds to my workload. When I ask her to help out, she just apologizes and promises to do better next time. But I've noticed she rinses them when my husband is around, which makes me think she's doing it on purpose to make things difficult for me. Sometimes she'll offer to get something from the store for me, but then later she'll say she actually needed something herself. This happens a lot. I used to think she was just forgetful or that her bad knees made moving painful for her, so I wanted to help. but now I'm starting to feel like she's intentionally causing problems. I've thought about talking to my husband about it, but he's already stressed from work, and I don't want to add to his burden. This behavior from Catherine has been going on for years, and when I talked to a friend about it, she said it sounds like Catherine is bullying me. She suggested talking to my husband, but I worry that if I do, Catherine, who doesn't have any other family, might end up in a facility. At one point, I thought it would be better to just endure it. However, one day, something happened that changed how I felt. I planned to drop off Lily at my parents' place. They love having Lily over, and sometimes she stays for sleepovers. Thanks for always bringing Lily. We look forward to these visits. Why don't you stay over sometimes too? My mom said. I'd love to, but I'm worried about leaving Catherine alone. I'll head home. Don't spoil Lily with too many toys, I replied. After a brief chat, I decided to return to the apartment where Catherine was waiting. But when I got there, I realized I'd left the keys at home. At first, I was concerned, but then I remembered Catherine was home and decided to ring the intercom. I dialed the room number, but there was no response. I wondered if she had gone out, so I decided to wait outside for a while. But Catherine never returned. After about 2 hours, it got dark, and I followed another resident into the building. Catherine rarely goes out at night, so I was sure she was home. I pressed the intercom button, but still got no response. Eventually, I heard a faint sound from inside, confirming Catherine was indeed there. I tried the intercom a few more times, but she refused to come out. Feeling defeated, I stayed at a nearby motel for the night, planning to return when Bob was back from his business trip. When I told Bob what happened, he was upset on my behalf, but Catherine just said, "Oh, maybe I didn't hear because of my hearing. I'm getting old, you know," trying to hide her smirk. Relieved to be back inside, I grabbed my keys and went to pick up Lily from my parents' house. After discussing the situation with them, they said, "Sounds like she's giving you a hard time. If it becomes too much, you're always welcome back here." Their comforting words brought tears to my eyes, but in front of Lily, I quickly wiped them away and headed home. For a while, there were no more issues with Catherine. Then, out of the blue, Bob's international transfer got finalized. A permanent move, not just a business trip. Yeah, we finally bought a place, and now this international assignment. "What do you think?" Bob asked. I couldn't answer Bob's question immediately. Considering the potential stress for Lily, I decided it would be best for the two of us to stay in the U.S. Soon after the decision, Bob had to leave for Europe. Although he was concerned about us, he seemed too swamped with work to give it much thought. So the life of me, Lily, and Catherine was about to begin. However, as expected, living with Catherine turned sour the moment Bob left for Europe. Her attitude changed dramatically. That day, a storm was approaching, and it was dangerous to venture outside. Yet Catherine dropped a bombshell on me. "Now that Bob's gone, wouldn't it be better if you and Lily move out?" she said. "Excuse me? What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "Just what I said. I'll take over from here. I just feel I can't relax with strangers in the house. I'd appreciate it if you could leave right now," Catherine replied. I was in complete disbelief at Catherine's audacity. It's true that Catherine and I aren't related, but I've always tried my best to make our cohabitation comfortable. At the very least, I've always treated her as family. However, to Catherine, it seems we were just an afterthought. I was considering gathering my things and heading back to my parents' place when she told me, instead of dilly-dallying, "Why don't you just get out?" Before I knew it, dressed as we were, Lily and I were thrown out of our own home. No matter how much I banged on the door, Catherine wouldn't come out. Lost and confused, I carried Lily through the pouring rain to a nearby park. There was a roof there, which I thought might offer some shelter from the rain. Ideally, I would have checked into a motel or returned to my parents' place, but I'd left both my wallet and phone inside the house. I felt helpless and sat in the park, trying to figure out our next move. I'm not sure how much time passed in the torrential downpour. Overwhelmed by fatigue and cold, I began to doze off. It was already dark, And even though it was summer, the cold was biting, and I feared we might catch a cold. As bad as things were, it seemed the only option was to walk to my parents' home. But it would be a 3-hour walk. As I was contemplating our situation, I saw two distant lights approaching. Given the rain, I couldn't see clearly, but the lights belonged to two police officers. I thought maybe they could help. But before I could approach, one of them called out to me. "Are you Emma? And is this little one Lily?" the officer asked. I was surprised the officer knew my name but weakly replied, "Yes, that's us." Then the officer said, "Please come to the station with us." Why the police station? I wondered if something was amiss. Urged by the officer, Lily, and I got into the patrol car. We were freezing from being out in the rain for so long, but the officers had thoughtfully brought large towels. "You might need these. We've got some spare clothes back at the station for you," they said kindly. Wondering why they knew about us and why we were headed to the police station, I inquired, "How did you know where to find us?" They responded, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon fell asleep and woke up to find we had arrived at the police station. Following the officers inside, to my surprise, I saw Catherine and my uncle. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" I asked. He was contacted by Bob. Bob suspected you might be having issues with his mom, and since he's abroad, he wanted me to keep an eye on things for him, my uncle explained. According to my uncle, Bob had spoken to him about this issue. Before he said Bob had requested him to keep an eye on things since he couldn't be there himself, being overseas. It turns out he saw us in the rain earlier today. He was considering taking us in himself, but thought Catherine's behavior was extreme, so he reported to the police. That's why the officers knew our whereabouts and came to get us. Catherine had also been asked to come to the police station. She sat on a sofa glaring at me, seemingly clueless about why she was there. "Why do I have to be here? I have a bad knee, you know." "If Bob was here, this wouldn't be happening," Catherine complained. But this entire situation was a result of Bob asking my uncle for help. In discussions with the police, there was a high likelihood that the events might have legal implications, hence I was advised to consider hiring an attorney. An attorney? That's an overreaction. I just locked the door, that's all. I didn't do anything else, Catherine defended herself. "Do you even realize what you've done? You threw Emma and a little child out in torrential rain. That's not something forgivable." My uncle stood up for us and stated that in fact, I was the rightful owner of the house. "That's impossible. Bob is the head of the household. He's the rightful owner. Now that he's not here, it should be mine," Catherine insisted. Catherine was under the impression that Bob was the owner, but she was mistaken. Actually, my uncle runs a real estate business and got us a great deal on a condo. Bob had recommended that the property be put under my name. I was indifferent at the time, but now I'm glad I heeded Bob's advice. Later on, following my uncle's advice, I decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer said it would be challenging to evict Catherine. Therefore, the best course of action might be to place her in a care facility. Upon hearing this, I immediately called Bob to explain the situation. Bob hadn't anticipated the issue would escalate this much and said he'd like to return from Japan to discuss it properly. He also said he was considering placing Catherine in a facility, unaware of all this. Catherine, despite being at the police station, casually snacked on some crackers. I couldn't return to the house with Catherine, so I decided to take shelter at my parents' place until Bob returned. Bob would be back in a week, giving me time to ponder our next steps. If Bob wouldn't support me, then divorce seemed like the only option. Regret filled me, wishing I had sought advice sooner. A week later, Bob returned from Europe and was at the house with Catherine. So I moved back home from my parents' place. Given the urgency of his return, Bob had to go back to Europe soon. He could only stay in Japan for a few days, so we needed to discuss our next moves. I've heard some things from Emma's uncle. Is all of that true? Bob asked. It's all lies. I haven't done anything. Emma's plotting something to evict me. Catherine stubbornly refused to admit any wrongdoing. She even claimed I was scheming against her. Bob, who should have been on my side, seemed to want to consider Catherine's perspective. I get it. So, do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? Evidence? Of course not, Catherine insisted. Emma, do you have any evidence? Bob turned to me. To be honest, I've been so busy with work, I haven't been able to keep an eye on things. I'm not sure who to believe, I admitted. I handed Bob something I had with me. What's this? He asked. I gave Bob a voice recorder I had been using. It contained recordings of Catherine, who not only evicted me, but also often berated me. When Bob played it, he heard Catherine's voice saying things like, "Such a worthless wife. I wonder why he even married you." Hearing this, Catherine quickly began to defend herself. This is taken out of context. Everyone has their moments, right? I was just frustrated at that time. But it was just this once, even as Catherine claimed this, a barrage of recorded verbal abuses played from the voice recorder. There were countless instances, and even some which weren't captured on the device. Bob's hand holding the voice recorder trembled with tension and anger. Meanwhile, Catherine looked guilt-ridden. "Mom, what is this about?" Bob asked, but Catherine remained silent. "If you won't answer, then I assume this is all true. If so, I need to protect Emma and Lily. You understand that, right?" Bob said. I had never seen Bob angry in all the years we've been together. Catherine, probably seeing this side of Bob for the first time too, looked frightened and shrunk back, unable to say a word. Afterward, there were several discussions until Bob's return to Europe. I asserted that I could no longer live with Catherine, considering Lily's presence and not wanting a repeat of this event. Bob seemed to share my sentiment, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Catherine strongly opposed the idea, complicating the discussions. Regardless, I've decided to sell the house. So, you can't stay here anymore. If you don't want the facility, you'll need to find another place, I told Catherine. How dare you decide this on your own? I won't allow you to sell the house. Catherine resisted the idea of selling the house, but it was a tough request to accommodate. That's because Lily and I had decided to move to Europe. Bob regretted not being more present for his family and wanted to be there for us moving forward. Although I was hesitant about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us reassured me. Besides, Lily is only 2, and it would be good for her to practice her communication skills in Europe. Therefore, selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, was the only option. If we left it as it was, Catherine would have to cover the mortgage, considering she's on a fixed income. She doesn't have that kind of money given her future prospects. Someone should be around to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine was adamant about not moving into a facility. So we had to forcefully place her in one. I'm sorry, but I've got to head back to Europe. Could you handle any procedures required here? Bob asked before heading back. With help from those around me, I managed to finalize Catherine's admission into the facility. The facility staff kept me updated on Catherine's condition, but it seems she's not doing well. It'd be one thing if she were just down, but apparently she's been giving people there a hard time. Before heading to Europe, I went to visit her to see how she was doing, but she lashed out at me, saying, "What's the big idea? Why have you locked me up in this place?" She even vented her frustrations on the staff, complaining, "How can you expect anyone to eat this food? Isn't there something more flavorful? This isn't nearly enough. The beds are uncomfortable, and other residents keep making snide remarks. I'm going to lose my mind in here." When I apologized to the staff, they were very understanding. "It's all good," one of the staff members assured me. "We see this kind of behavior often. Just leave it to us. We'll keep you in the loop. And if anything comes up, we'll give you a ring. So don't you worry." Despite all the harassment I got from her since we used to live together, I couldn't help but feel worried as I headed to Europe. Upon arriving in Paris, Bob met me at the airport, and we headed to the apartment we'd rented. They say rents in Paris are higher than in Texas, But since Bob's company gives him an allowance for housing, we were lucky to find a spacious and affordable place. The neighbors in our building are super friendly and have been very kind to me, even though I don't speak French fluently. Yesterday, a neighbor shared some wine and cheese with me. In return, I gave them some mac and cheese. Meanwhile, I'm gradually learning French along with my daughter Lily. I know there's a limit to self-study, so I've also enrolled in a language school. There are a lot of Americans there, many of whom, like me, are new to France. I've made some friends there and am really enjoying my life in Paris. Back in the States, I had to always be concerned about Catherine, which often prevented me from fully enjoying outings with friends. But here, I can indulge in leisurely lunches just the way I like. The only concern right now is Lily. She's still too young for kindergarten. Kids here usually start kindergarten the year they turn 5, so I hope she picks up enough French by then. Fortunately, Lily seems to be catching on pretty quickly. I'm thinking of getting a job once Lily starts preschool. Bob says he's okay with me staying at home, but living in Paris has made me want to explore more opportunities. Seeing how ambitious and confident people are here has ignited something within me. I've become friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe, and she hinted there might be a job for me there. That cafe isn't only popular among the American community, many of their customers are also learning English. There might be challenges ahead, but since coming to France, Bob and I have been communicating much better. I feel more confident in expressing my feelings, and I believe no matter what happens, we'll face it as a family. Right now, I feel happier than I've ever been in my life.
Hi everyone, my name is Patricia William. I never thought I'd be sharing this, but maybe my story will help someone recognize the signs I missed. It all started 3 years ago. I was 28 and running my growing interior design firm when I first met Thomas. "We need something modern yet timeless for our new corporate headquarters," he said during our initial meeting. His confident smile and trust in my vision for the space were magnetic. Thomas's compliments became a regular thing. "Your eye for detail is incredible," he'd say, often lingering after project meetings. One coffee date turned into dinner, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. His mother, Catherine, was warm and welcoming from the start. "Sweetheart, you bring out the best in my Thomas," she said while helping me pick wedding flowers. I haven't seen him this happy in years. Our wedding was a dream, and the first months of marriage felt perfect. Thomas showered me with thoughtful gifts and surprise weekend getaways. When I found out I was pregnant just 6 months after the wedding, his excitement seemed genuine. Catherine was over the moon. "We need the most magical nursery ever," she exclaimed, thumbing through design catalogs with me. But then, little things started to change. Thomas's work meetings stretched later and later. Odd charges appeared on our credit card statements. "The market's been crazy," he explained casually. "Just some client entertainment expenses." My best friend, Sarah, noticed first. "Patricia, isn't it strange how he's never home for dinner anymore? And what about those late-night texts?" I defended him, brushing it off. "He's working hard for us." Even Catherine seemed uneasy. She'd give me concerned looks when Thomas showed up late to family dinners, his eyes glassy, his movements unsteady. But she never said anything directly. Victoria, his business partner, made a passing comment at a corporate event. "Thomas has been different in meetings. Is everything okay at home?" I ignored it, focusing instead on my pregnancy and designing the nursery. The pale blue walls and hand-painted clouds were coming together beautifully, just like I thought our life was. Until the night I found the receipt. I was searching for a missing invoice in Thomas's home office when I stumbled across a receipt from a jewelry store. The items weren't for me. That same night, he claimed he was stuck in a budget meeting. "The shop project's behind schedule," he slurred over the phone. "Don't wait up." Looking back, all the signs were there. The missing money, the late nights, the mood swings, the secretive phone calls. But love can blind you to the truth you don't want to face. My truth unraveled in the most heartbreaking way in a delivery room. At 2 a.m., contractions hit like a freight train. Sarah rushed me to the hospital, frantically trying to reach Thomas. His phone went straight to voicemail, 6 times. Catherine arrived minutes later, her face tight with worry. "He's not answering my calls either," she whispered, squeezing my hand as another contraction racked my body. 3 hours later, Thomas finally stumbled into the delivery room. The sharp stench of alcohol announced his arrival before he even spoke. "Why's everyone being so dramatic? It's just a baby," he slurred, barely able to stand. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Chen stepped in, firm but composed. "Mr. William, if you can't compose yourself." A scream tore from my throat as another contraction hit. What happened next plays in slow motion in my mind. Thomas lurched forward, his face twisted with rage. "Shut up. You're embarrassing me." His hand struck my face before anyone could stop him. The room erupted. Security guards rushed in. Catherine's scream mixed with the shouts of the medical staff. "Get him out. Now," Dr. Chen commanded, her voice like steel. "That's my son," Catherine cried, grabbing his face. "Thomas, you're high. You just hit your wife in labor. Leave, now." Thomas was dragged out, kicking and shouting. The next 2 hours were a haze of pain, tears, and sheer determination. At 7:43 a.m., Alexander James William entered the world, perfect despite the chaos that had preceded his arrival. As I recovered in the hospital, Catherine went to our house to gather some essentials. When she returned, her face was pale, and she clutched a small bag tightly. "I found these in his office," she whispered, showing me photos on her phone. Hidden compartments revealed baggies of white powder, pills, and drug paraphernalia. There's more, so much more. The truth hit me harder than Thomas's slap ever had. The missing money, the erratic behavior, the late nights, it all made terrible sense. 3 days later, Catherine and I confronted him. She insisted on being there, and thank God she was. "You went through my private things." Thomas's eyes were wild, unfocused. "You had no right." "You're an addict, Thomas." Catherine's voice cracked with pain. "You need help." His face twisted with rage as he lunged forward, knocking his desk chair to the floor. "You're both crazy. This is my house, my life. You hit your wife while she was giving birth to your son." Catherine snapped, stepping between us as he advanced. "Get out, both of you." With one violent sweep of his arm, Thomas sent everything on his desk crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass punctuated his fury. I clutched the photos Catherine had taken, proof of his addiction, proof I wasn't imagining things, proof that my seemingly perfect life had been built on lies. The security cameras caught everything. His aggression, his obvious intoxication, his threats. Catherine insisted we file a report that night. "I love my son," she said later, cradling baby Alex as I packed a bag of essentials. "But I won't let him hurt you or this precious boy. We need to plan carefully, Patricia. This is just the beginning." Looking at my newborn son, I felt a shift inside me. Fear hardened into determination. Thomas didn't know it yet, but his empire of lies was about to crumble. I just had to be smart about how I dismantled it. The first 2 months with Alex were a blur of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Thomas's behavior grew increasingly erratic, but I knew I couldn't act until I had undeniable proof. That proof arrived one rainy afternoon in the form of Victoria Hayes, his business partner. "We need to talk," she whispered, her hands trembling as we met at a small cafe 3 towns over. "Not here. We're not safe here." Victoria pulled out a folder and laid it on the table. "Look at these contracts," she said, her voice shaking. "The signatures don't match. And these vendor payments, they're going to shell companies Thomas created." My stomach churned as she showed me spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Millions of dollars were missing, traced to accounts I didn't recognize. "He's selling company assets behind my back," she said, tears welling up. "Last week, I caught him making a drug deal in the parking garage. When he saw me, he said he'd destroy me if I told anyone." Back home, I started digging. Catherine watched Alex while I combed through Thomas's office at night. The evidence was staggering. "Your client, the Hendersons, their $50,000 deposit never made it to your business account," Catherine said, showing me bank records. Thomas intercepted it. One night, I found his burner phone. The messages made my stomach turn. Exchanges with drug dealers, explicit texts with multiple women, including clients I recognized. "Just closed another deal with Mrs. Peterson," one message read. "The stupid expletive thinks she's getting a penthouse renovation. Her husband's money will keep us in powder for months." Victoria called me at midnight, sobbing. "The company is weeks away from bankruptcy. Thomas just emptied our emergency reserves." I installed hidden cameras in his office. The footage was damning. Thomas snorting lines off client contracts, making threats over the phone, and counting stacks of cash. "You're nothing without me," he screamed one night, high out of his mind. "I made you successful. I own you." Catherine helped me document everything: the bruises, the threatening texts, the bounced checks to Alex's pediatrician. "We need a bulletproof plan," she said, helping me photograph the contents of Thomas's secret safe. "One wrong move, and he'll destroy everything you've built." The final straw came when I discovered Alex's college fund was empty. Every penny was gone. "I had some business opportunities," Thomas smirked when I confronted him. "The kid's barely 2 months old. Plenty of time to rebuild it." Catherine helped me set up secret bank accounts while Victoria rallied board members who already suspected something was wrong. "Tomorrow morning, everything changes," Victoria promised. "The board meeting will expose it all. Be ready." That night, while packing Alex's essentials into a go bag, I found a receipt for a storage unit. Inside was the mother lode, detailed records of every illegal transaction, every stolen dollar, every betrayal. "It's his insurance policy," Catherine realized. "Proof to blackmail everyone if he gets caught." Little did Thomas know, his insurance policy would be his downfall. By tomorrow, his empire of lies would collapse. But first, I had to get Alex and myself to safety. "I've got a safe house ready," Catherine whispered, cradling her grandson tightly. "Let him walk into that board meeting thinking he's still in control. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." At dawn, Catherine drove Alex and me to the safe house. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "Board meeting in 1 hour. Everything's ready." From our secure location, I watched the live stream. Thomas swaggered into the boardroom, his trademark arrogance plastered across his face. But his smirk froze the moment Victoria stood up, a remote control in her hand. "Board members," she began, her voice steady and clear. "What you're about to see will shock you." Slide after slide exposed Thomas's crimes: embezzlement, fraudulent contracts, offshore accounts, and drug transactions. The room was silent except for the sharp intake of breath from the board members. Thomas shot to his feet and lunged for the door, but security guards were waiting. His face twisted with fury as DEA agents stepped into view. "You can't prove anything," he shouted, desperation cracking his voice. Victoria remained calm. "Your own records prove everything," she said, clicking to the next slide. A photo of the contents from his storage unit. "Your so-called insurance policy has become your prison sentence." Catherine's testimony was the final blow. "My son is a danger to his wife and child," she declared in court, her voice unwavering. "I have documented his drug abuse, his violence, and his threats. He needs to be held accountable." Thomas cycled through rehab centers like vacation homes, checking in, checking out, and relapsing every time. Each attempt at recovery was more hollow than the last. Meanwhile, my life was transforming. My design firm, Phoenix Interiors, rose from the ashes of my shattered marriage. High-profile clients who admired my strength trusted me with their projects. "Strong women support strong women" became our unofficial motto, and it resonated deeply. 3 years flew by. My studio was thriving, and Alex had grown into a joyful preschooler who loved helping me paint with his toy brushes. "Just like Mommy," he'd exclaim, giggling as Catherine snapped pictures. Her gallery of grandson photos dominated the living room, each one more cherished than the last. On Alex's 3rd birthday, a letter arrived. It was from Thomas's lawyer, pleading for a reconciliation. "I've changed," the letter claimed. "I deserve another chance." I didn't even finish reading it. Instead, I fed it into the bonfire at Alex's party, watching the words crumble into ash. Inside, Alex blew out his candles, surrounded by love and laughter, genuine happiness. In the background, the TV played breaking news. Former CEO Thomas Williams sentenced for fraud, embezzlement, and drug trafficking. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Catherine said, holding Alex up to his cake. Victoria was ready with her camera, capturing the moment. Looking around at my real family, Catherine, who had chosen truth over loyalty to her son. Victoria, who risked everything to expose corruption. And Alex, my sweet boy who would grow up knowing only honesty and strength. I realized some wishes had already come true. "Mommy, can we paint my room blue tomorrow?" Alex asked, frosting smudge across his cheek. I smiled, meeting Catherine's proud gaze. Of course, baby, we can make it any color you want. Because we were free. Free to create a life filled with joy, integrity, and hope. Thomas's prison sentence was justice, but our happiness, that was the sweetest revenge of all. What would you have done if you discovered your spouse's addiction and betrayal at one of the most vulnerable moments of your life? During childbirth? Would you give them another chance, or would you choose to protect yourself and your child? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hey there, I'm Sandra. I'm 28, and after going through hell and back, I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, I'm working part-time at this cozy little bookstore downtown called Pig Turner. It's not much, but it pays the bills and keeps a roof over my head in the modest apartment I share with my best friend, Lily. Sandra, you're going to crush this final. Lily cheers as I hunch over my textbooks at our tiny kitchen table. I manage a tired smile. Thanks, Lil. I can't believe I'm almost there. Girl, after everything with that jerk Mike, you deserve this win, she says, her voice softening at the mention of my ex-husband. The name still sends a shiver down my spine. Mike, the nightmare I finally woke up from. Sandra, you okay? You zoned out for a sec. I shake my head, clearing the memories. Yeah, just remembering. But that's the past, right? I'm free now. Just then, my phone buzzes with a text from Jason, my English lit study buddy. Hey Sandra, still on for our study session at the library? I smile and type back, absolutely. See you in 20. Jason's been a lifesaver this semester. Smart, funny, and totally platonic. Exactly what I needed after the disaster with Mike. As I gather my books, Lily gives me a knowing look. So, any updates on the Eric front? I feel my cheeks flush. Eric, the sweet, unassuming guy who comes into the bookstore every week, always leaving with a new novel, and that smile that makes my heart skip a beat. He asked me if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I admit, unable to hide my grin. Lily squeals and pulls me into a hug. Sandra, that's amazing. You deserve someone who treats you right. As I head out the door, I can't help but feel a flutter of excitement. Graduation is just around the corner. I've got amazing friends, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at love again. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Little did I know, my past wasn't quite finished with me yet. But that's a story for another day. Right now, I've got a future to build, one page at a time. The morning of my graduation dawned bright and full of promise. Standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my cap and gown, it hardly seemed real that this day had finally arrived. Sandra, you look amazing, Lily exclaims, snapping pictures with her phone. Total boss babe vibes. I laugh, striking a pose. Thanks, Lil. I can't believe we're actually here. My phone buzzes again. This time a text from Eric. Good luck today, Sandra. Can't wait to see you walk across that stage. You've earned this. My heart flutters. Eric has become such a significant part of my life in such a short time, and his support means everything. The auditorium buzzes with excitement as hundreds of graduates in black gowns mill about, eager and full of hope. I find my place in line, my heart pounding with anticipation. The ceremony begins, and as I watch my classmates cross the stage, pride swells within me. After everything I've overcome, this is my moment. Sandra Johnson, the dean calls. My heart races as I step onto the stage, reaching for my diploma with trembling hands. Then, Sandra, wait. A voice cuts through the ceremony, freezing me in place. No, it couldn't be. I turn and my blood runs cold. Rushing down the aisle is Mike, my ex-husband, the man who tried to crush my dreams for years. What are you doing here? I hiss as he bounds onto the stage, dropping to one knee, a ring in hand. The audience gasps. Andra, baby, I'm so sorry for everything. Please give me another chance. Marry me again. Time seems to stop. Hundreds of eyes are on me, murmurs ripple through the crowd. Somewhere, I know Eric is watching this nightmare unfold. Are you insane? I manage, my voice trembling with fury. Get out of here, Mike. We're done. We've been done for years. Suddenly, security rushes in, pulling him away as he struggles, still calling my name. The ceremony dissolves into chaos. I flee the stage, pushing past confused faculty and classmates, tears blurring my vision. I don't stop running until I burst out into the bright sunlight. Sandra, wait. Eric's voice calls after me, He catches up, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? What the hell just happened in there? I can't speak. The flood of emotions I've been holding back crashing over me in sobs. Eric wraps his arms around me, holding me close. It's okay, he whispers. I've got you. You're safe now. I'm so sorry, I whisper through my tears. This isn't how today was supposed to go. Eric shakes his head, his eyes warm. You have nothing to apologize for. That guy, he's the one who should be sorry. That was Mike, I explain, my voice raw. My ex-husband. I thought I was finally free of him. Eric's jaw clenched. What he did in there. That's not okay, Sandra. Have you thought about getting a restraining order? I nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. Maybe it's time I looked into that. As we walked away from the auditorium, my graduation gown billowing in the breeze, I felt a swirl of emotions. Anger at Mike for ruining my day, sadness for the celebration I'd lost, but also a glimmer of hope. Despite Mike's best efforts, I wasn't alone anymore. I had Eric, Lily, and a strength I was only just beginning to recognize within myself. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. The days after the graduation disaster were a blur. I barely left my apartment, ignoring calls and messages from concerned friends. The anxiety and depression I thought I'd left behind with my marriage came crashing back like a tidal wave. Sandra, you need to eat something, Eric said gently, setting a plate of toast on my bedside table. He'd been a constant presence, patient and understanding, even when I tried to push him away. I can't. I can't face anyone right now. Hey, look at me, Eric's voice was soft but firm. I reluctantly met his gaze. What Mike did was awful, but you can't let him win by hiding away. You're stronger than that. As much as I hated to admit it, Eric was right. I couldn't let Mike control my life anymore. Slowly, I began to reconnect with the world. But when I scrolled through social media, my heart sank. That lying bastard, I exclaimed, nearly throwing my phone across the room. What is it? Eric asked, alarmed. I showed him the screen, my hands shaking. Mike's been posting all these lies, saying I cheated on him, that I'm unstable, and people are believing him. Eric's expression darkened. We need to do something about this, Sandra. This isn't just gossip, it's defamation. As we dug deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. Mike hadn't just been spreading lies online, he'd been systematically sabotaging my life for months. I don't understand, I said, pacing the living room. How did he know about that job interview? I never told him I applied. Lily, who had been helping us investigate, looked up from her laptop. Sandra, I think he's been intercepting your mail. Look at this. She showed me a series of redirected mail requests, all in Mike's handwriting. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He'd been stalking me, controlling my life from the shadows. That night, as Lily and I sat on the couch, the full weight of everything crashed down on me. I should have told you, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. The things he did, the things he said, I was so ashamed. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Lily said fiercely. He's the one who should be ashamed. As I poured out years of pent-up pain, detailing the emotional and verbal abuse I'd suffered at Mike's hands, Lily listened without judgment. For the first time, I felt the burden lighten. Over the next few days, we developed a plan. Eric reached out to a lawyer friend for advice, and Lily helped me document every instance of Mike's harassment. As we put the finishing touches on our plan, I felt a surge of empowerment. Mike had tried to break me, to control me, to erase the person I'd worked so hard to become. But he'd underestimated me, and now he was about to learn just how strong I really was. The date of our sting operation arrived, and my nerves were on edge. We'd set the trap carefully, orchestrating a fake job interview we knew Mike would try to sabotage. You ready for this? Eric asked, squeezing my hand reassuringly. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Lily and Jason were already in position, hidden cameras at the ready. I walked into the cafe where we'd arranged the interview, trying to act natural despite the butterflies in my stomach. Right on cue, Mike showed up, lurking in a corner booth. I pretended not to notice him as I greeted our plant, a friend posing as the interviewer. Halfway through the fake interview, Mike made his move. He approached our table, his face a mask of concern. Sandra, thank God I found you, he said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. I can't let you go through with this interview. This company. Cut the crap, Mike. I interrupted, standing up. We know what you've been doing. The stalking, the lies, all of it. His face twisted with rage. You ungrateful, after everything I've done for you. That's when Lily and Jason emerged, cameras rolling. Several of our mutual friends, who we'd invited to witness the truth, stepped forward, shock and disgust etched across their faces. Mike realized he'd been caught. He tried to backpedal, but it was too late. His true colors were on full display. In the aftermath, armed with our evidence, I was granted a restraining order against Mike, but he couldn't let go. Within weeks, he violated it, showing up at my workplace. This time, there were real legal consequences. As Mike was led away in handcuffs, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But life had more surprises in store. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Horizon Publishing, a prestigious company I'd always dreamed of working for. We've been following your story, Sandra, the HR manager said. Your resilience and determination are exactly what we're looking for. We'd like to offer you a position as an assistant editor. I was speechless. After years of struggle, my career was finally taking off. 1 year later, I stood in my new office at Horizon, a framed photo of Eric and me on my desk. I had just wrapped up a major project, feeling more confident and empowered than ever before. My phone buzzed with a news alert, and I nearly dropped it when I saw the headline. Local man arrested for fraud and investment scheme. There was Mike's mugshot, looking haggard and defeated. He had tried to scam investors in a desperate get-rich-quick scheme and was now facing serious jail time. I sat back in my chair, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing Mike finally face consequences for his actions. But mostly I felt free. Mike no longer had any power over me or my life. That evening, as Eric and I walked hand in hand through the park near our new apartment, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. You know, I said, a few years ago, I never would have believed I could be this happy, this whole. Eric smiled. You did all the hard work, Sandra. I'm just glad I get to be part of your story now. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road hadn't been easy, but I'd emerged stronger, wiser, and surrounded by love. Mike had tried to write my story for me, casting me as the victim, but I'd taken back the pen. Now I was the author of my own life, and the next chapter, it was brighter than ever. The story of Sandra's triumph over her toxic ex-husband has come to an end. Now I have a question for you. Is it ever acceptable to forgive someone who has repeatedly manipulated and abused you? Or is cutting them out of your life completely the only way to truly heal? Share your thoughts in the comments below.